Welcome, everybody, to podcast number 187. Looking for a soup to nuts overview of construction technology. If that's true for you, that's what we're talking about today.
This is the Elevate Construction Podcast, delivering remarkable content for workers, leaders, and companies in construction wanting to take their next step. Get ready to step out of your comfort zone with Jason Schroeder as he encourages you to do better, live a remarkable life, and expect more. Let's go.
Welcome, everybody, today to our podcast. We are with Hugh Seaton today. Anything you'd like to say to our podcast guest, Hugh, this morning as we start our podcast?
Yeah, Jason, I'm excited to be here and talk about the book and talk about construction technology more generally.
Okay, why is, and I know this is probably a little bit of a general question, but you had mentioned, and you and I were talking about before we actually hit record, the pipe fitters and the superintendents and the project engineers and the people out in construction. Why should technology be on our minds? So like as we're entering this podcast and we're welcoming everybody with good energy, why should that be on our minds? Why should we care?
Yeah, because it's coming. I mean, it's already in your pocket. You know, you already have a supercomputer with the best camera in history, basically, in your pocket already. It now has a laser rangefinder on it if it's an Apple. So it's coming and it's here. And it's a little bit different kind of toolkit from what you're used to. But used right, it's a really powerful toolkit that can let construction professionals focus on what they want to focus on and worry about enabling things like scheduling and rework and all that less than has been true in the past. So used right, it's a great toolkit, and the hope is that people can get more comfortable with it.
I love that. And from just to signpost a little bit of where my mind is, I do love technology. So for me, I've been a career superintendent and general superintendent and then field director. So I know that we may not today talk about specific applications, but just as a representative example, like I've worked with Bluebeam and most of the construction last planner lean technologies that were available 2 years ago. I'm certified and this isn't bragging, I'm just saying as a superintendent, I'm certified in Revit and in AutoCAD, obviously use Navisworks Manage, P6, all of these technologies, and then the technologies in the field, like you said before we hit record, that have to do with VDC and BIM. I love these things. I'm seeing a trend this is why I loved your comment, using it the right way so we can focus. I'm seeing a trend where there's like 1,000 new lean last planner applications or different technologies. They say, oh, we want to do something. Let's get rid of the human element and just go strictly to an online platform. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. In order to get this done, we need the human element in there too. And so I loved your opening comment that if you use it right, then we can get back to doing what we need to do, the back to basics fundamentals. So I'd love, as we're talking today, for us to really dive in there. Would that be fair, Hugh?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. Any thoughts before?
But actually, yeah, if I may, one of the things I talk about in the book a lot is whether it's AI or just straight software, nothing can do what people do. So the intuition and experience that somebody builds over time is right now totally irreplaceable. What technology should be doing is empowering you to not focus on things like where are our tools or things that are repetitive and don't require that level of kind of experience and knowledge. So it's really important to not get worried that robots are taking over. Anyone who's seen a robot on a job site will immediately feel comfortable that their job is not in jeopardy. It's meant to be there. It is meant to be there like any other tool. A tractor doesn't run itself. A drill doesn't run itself. A TIG welder doesn't run itself.
Yeah.
Someone has to be there making decisions and deciding what's the right next thing to do. And digital technology does the same stuff. It's just a little less visible.
I like that because, and just going back to, I really liked when you mentioned pipe fitters before we hit record, but or the foreman or the superintendent. We have systems that put certain things on autopilot so that we can focus, right? on a project site, even the project administrator will help with the paperwork and the administration. The foreman will help with the general logistics. Even some some items for outsourcing, some outsourcing services will help us with document control and things like that. There are people and things to whom we delegate or use to make us more effective. In the past, technology has been like, oh my gosh, this is something I have to do myself, that I have to learn, that I have to reverse engineer. Hopefully you can help guide us in a way to where it can be, somewhat on autopilot and reduce the burden. So I love that. So I'd love to, before we get into it too far, introduce you, your background, and then I'm going to ask you, if we forget, what are you passionate about and why are you here? Why are we on the podcast? So could you do a little introduction about you and your history, your background?
Yeah. So Hugh Seaton. I spent about almost 20 years in technology marketing for Sony and AOL and Google and a bunch of other folks. And a little bit less than 10 years ago, kind of transitioned that into being a software entrepreneur. So I launched a company that was primarily focused on training and some other related things, not just in the built environment, but at the same time, I was lucky enough to be one of the team that created the AEC hackathon. So a guy named Damon Hernandez and another one, Paul Doherty, created this thing and asked me to be part of the team doing it. And that really got me passionate about what's going on in the built environment more generally. And Paul and I had actually done some work with some a BIM company he was running in China, where I was living at the time. So this has all been kind of building towards where I am right now, where I've learned a lot about how technology gets adopted, how to talk about it, how to help people to feel comfortable with it, whether it was TVs and Walkman back in the early noughts to now to more advanced things. That kind of got me to in talking to people, I realized there's a bit of a gap, and this is really normal, by the way. Construction likes to talk about itself as if it's the slowest, least productive, whatever industry. Every industry has gone through something like this, or some of them haven't yet. Or so in terms of digital transformation as an industry, but individual people saying, I'm ready to try this new thing, or I'm not ready to try this new thing. There's nothing that slow about construction, except for the fact that it's, you got to remember, it's not one company building a thing 50,000 times. It's a collection of companies that come together every time, and they don't all know the same people. And so it makes sense that things have been slower than they were, but you're really starting to see an acceleration. And again, I came across this sense that there'd be value in making people feel comfortable with this new toolkit. And what I'm passionate about is the things the built environment industry, more than just construction, but from design all the way through to facilities management, the things that this can do for people and humanity. I mean, everything we do happens inside something someone built. So it's incredible how fundamental. I think we lose sight of that sometimes. So if I can help to advance the industry, if I can help make people more comfortable with technologies that are coming out, but also comfortable saying, I don't like that technology and here's why. Mm-hmm. I think that'd be a good thing. And that's what got me to write the book and why we're here.
And so that probably ties exactly into your mission, is let's make technology more implementable. That's kind of this isn't a competition. I'm not trying to ride on your coattails, but that's also something I'm attempting to do with lean and with training, is let's make it understandable to where it's implementable, to where people actually reap the blessings of these things, right? I loved your point, to be able to notice when something isn't working. This isn't a complaint fest on my part, but I have noticed that there are people that will design certain applications based on custom tailored to where what the interface or the database or the actual technology can do, not based on what we need out in the field in construction. And there needs to be a lot more listening going on there. And if that could happen, my goodness, like I can just wait for the day when daily reports and safety observations and scheduling systems and all of these things were custom tailored to make it easier in the field. So I really like your vision. Anyway, so it looks like you're going to say something.
I'm responding because I think one of the hopes is that by reading a book like mine or listening to your podcast, people get a comfort level to say, you know what, they need to listen to me now. Because I'll tell you, the people building construction now, I mean, software, and broader technologies now are dying to hear from the field. I'm telling you, either that or they shouldn't be in business. But it's pretty normal that the first round of software kind of was a little clunky and they didn't talk to anyone in the field. Yeah. They just got out the door what they could get out the door. Yeah. A lot of that stuff came from accounting and, and very office focused. Nobody said, hey, is it a pain in the neck for somebody to use their fingers and tap out a daily report instead of taking a picture of something they wrote or whatever it might be. And I think you're starting to definitely find that there are much better product managers, much better folks in charge of listening, and they're dying to get out there and talk. A great example of that is Dado is a company out of San Francisco, and they were completely changed in the beginning of their kind of growth by conversations with folks in the trades. I mean, they went from being some kind of a BIM thing, which they don't even talk about anymore, to being all about document management and a very fast, easy access to the latest information and single source of truth. So that came from them listening. So I encourage everybody in the audience, feel free to tell software makers, software companies what you think, because we're dying to hear about it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And so let's use this platform right now. And correct me if I step out of line here, because I don't want to skew anything you said, but like if there's any software developers for construction that get wind of this podcast or what we're doing, or that Hugh, specifically in construction, my statement is there are certain things that just really work really well. Like a couple of examples, like Bluebeam in construction works really, really well, right? BIM 360 Field from Autodesk worked really, really well. Revit works really, really well. There are a lot of applications, though, that still aren't that ease of use. Things, daily reports, even the project management softwares that we have, virtual reality. A lot of these things are too expensive. So anybody that wants to come on this show or on your LinkedIn or my LinkedIn or in a post or whatever and say, prove me wrong or change my mind, right? I would love that, because there are people, and especially people listening to this podcast, that just want to know, hey, I don't want to deal with the daily report problem anymore. I want an application that works well, right? I don't want to deal with the problem of safety observations taking too long. Those are my biggest annoyers. So come on the show and prove me wrong, change my mind. And then the other thing, to your point, if everyone listening will not just accept or fall in line, but actually reach out to these applications, these developers, and ask for a feedback, an interface there, right? Some communication. What I'm hearing you say is that everyone's very much willing to listen. And so I'm hoping that's true. I think that would be great. Like, anything you would add?
Yeah, it should be true. It should be true. I'm sure there are examples where it's not. In addition to this book that I wrote, once a quarter, I do a thing called the Construction Technology Quarterly. And the whole point of it is as big an overview of tech, because, a book, you can't talk about specific companies except for a case study here or there. Okay. But what I found also is that there's a real lack of one place where you can go find everything and then make up your own mind. Mm-hmm. So we created this thing that the first of them was in December of last year. The next will be in March. And that's, again, it's a way for people who are very good at what they do, but I don't want to say intimidated, but maybe not comfortable talking about digital technology, because it's just a whole bunch of words they don't know, or concepts that aren't really that hard. It's just, so what? If you don't know it, you don't know it. Yeah. I got to say, I think that the same is true in the other direction. I think that you'll find that software developers and folks kind of on the tech side, it can be intimidating talking to someone who spent 20 years out in the field building things, because they know things, they've seen things fail, they've just got a sense of history and what they've done that can be intimidating, and it's not so easy to go in and say, here's how we meet in the middle so I can help you. In fact, to be honest, that was the original idea of the AEC hackathon. It was supposed to get folks from the built environment generally, but construction specifically, together with developers in Silicon Valley, and it's worked. I mean, it's small scale, but it's worked.
Okay, I love that. One thing that I continue to come back to, because my focus, and I'm one of many, so I'm just saying in my small sphere of influence, what my job is to get, and No, let me say it like this. For professionals, field engineers, project engineers, superintendents, PMs, the people out there on the front lines, the foremen, the workers, distill down processes and techniques that will make it easier so that they can implement and have a more respectful construction environment, number one, with the right training, number two, so that they can have a better life, quite frankly, and go home on time and have less variation in their worlds, right? And when somebody in construction typically right now hears technology, the executives see dollar signs, the implementers say, is this realistic? And the people out on the project site worry about time. And so to your point, I love what you said. If there are forums, and at the end of this, we need to say, how can we reach out? How can we be a part of these forums? So please don't let me forget that. To where we're able to make educated decisions. My little saying that I like is, and I know that there's pros and cons with addictions, but I want training and technology and these functions and these processes and these applications to be as addictive as Facebook, as useful as YouTube, and as quick as Wikipedia. Like, I really think that's the measure for me. Meaning that if I'm talking about anything that we do in construction, whether it's document control or integrating with the building information model or field communication or anything, my question is, would our brains release dopamine the same way that it would if I get on here with Facebook? Maybe not all the way, but I don't like addictions for bad things. I like addictions for good things, right? How can we get more addicted to our schedules, our personal organization, integration, communication with the designers, all of these things in a natural and normal way, so that it doesn't take away from our day. And I just feel like if we know how Facebook runs and YouTube runs, and if we know the quickness and the speed of Wikipedia and how accessible it is, my question sometimes is, why are we still in database mode where it takes 23 clicks to get to something, right? And so that would be a challenge for me. And if any developer wants to reach out, I'm totally willing to help. And so I love what you're saying. Go ahead. Any thoughts there?
Well, I was going to say, let's talk about the expectation there, though. Like, if you wanted to find, it takes you one click to get onto Facebook, but if you want to find a post that you did, a year ago, it's still going to take you a bunch of clicks. So I think I hear you on the addiction or the comfort, feeling like, you want to keep going back to your schedule. I think another analogy might be a really, really reliable tool.
Okay.
So something you just know, and so it isn't so much that you're addicted to it. And I get what you mean, is that let's make people feel like the first place they look is their phone. But that's true for a tool that you always know is there. Because one of the things we know from it's interesting you use the word, you talk about training a lot. I've spent some time in e-learning, like I mentioned earlier. There's a guy who did a whole thing called Getting Things Done. Literally, he trademarked GTD. Which I think was pretty genius.
David Allen.
And his yeah, exactly. And his whole point is you operate much better when you're not holding things in your brain, when you can put them somewhere, you trust that they're there. I think that's where at least the kind of document management and information management side of construction technology goes. I think when we get to a place where people are doing their jobs completely comfortable that the second they need to know something, they can ask for it or look for it. And I think some of that is that's where AI can start to be helpful, because it gets better at recognizing patterns in what people look for, what they ask for. It can but it doesn't need to be AI to do this, but it can know where you are in the process, but also physically. Like your phone knows that anyway. So I think you're going to start to see stuff like that, where it gets better and better at surfacing information you're likely to want. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than having to, like you said earlier, click until you find a thing. And I think you're seeing companies like Procore get a little better at that. I think there's room to go. One of the issues with construction is really hard to get big data sets for a couple of reasons. One is it's really hard to say this thing is just like that thing on that job site, even if it kind of is. People don't always believe that. But also construction companies right now, and actually companies everywhere, they're a little concerned about sharing things across, outside of their own walls, and I just can't fault them for that. But it means that building applications that can do that, it's tough to pull the data together to train a model so it'll do that. But it's coming. It's being worked on for sure.
I love that. And I love your analogy. And so we're not going to, but we could close this podcast down right now, because we have all learned something, that the consistency, right? The reliability is probably the more important piece. What I would say to close that down is, to your point, if you're harnessing data, and I hear a lot of companies say, I want more data, I want the metrics. In lean construction, we're taught two things. We're use data and your presence in the field, go to the place of work, right? And we're taught to use only tried or tested technology that fits the needs of the company and the process that it's being used for, right? Those come from Toyota. And so reliability would really work for those. And if we're getting data in, what are we going to do with that, right? I've seen companies that will harvest a lot of data, but then that doesn't get translated into training or quick communications back. And so I'm not going to salvage my point, because maybe addicted isn't the right word. What I'm saying is, once the data comes in, what is the human element going back out that will actually affect a change at the root cause level? So I love what you're saying with that.
We did so as I was writing this book, I realized I kept coming across another point, which is a lot of people saying, I wish my people understood data better. So this is folks in the field, this was folks in unions, this was folks across the board. So I actually said, hey, I should do a course on data. And I asked one of the earliest people I talked to in writing the book was Sasha Reed from Procore. And I said, hey, Sasha, I'm thinking about doing a course on data. She's more involved in Procore.org, which does things like training and so on. We actually published a 5-part series on data in construction. And a lot of it speaks to what you just said. Again, it's a little bit like the book in that it starts from the kind of ground, not assuming you know anything, and then kind of builds up on that foundation. The book is more technology. Generally, there's a little piece of data in there. Point I'm getting at is just pulling in facts doesn't make it useful data yet. So one of the things a lot of companies have spent a year or two to figure out is they have to start being the process of collecting data is critical, or you can't do anything with it. Great example of that is a guy named Pat Hennessy from Harkkins Builders. I think they're in Maryland. He was up on Groundbreak, and they're making a big deal out of the fact that he's got a pretty tight story where he went around inside of Harkkins. They run something like four dozen projects or so. So he went to each of the PMs and said, I want you all to enter data the same way. Now that took a minute because people are used to doing things the way they are. You don't want to change mid-job. So it took about 18 months to 2 years. But at the end of that, everybody was putting in data the same way. So they were logging hours the same way. They were talking about issues the same way. They were logging progress the same way. Now they have, to the point you're making, is having a bunch of data doesn't matter if I can't make better decisions because of it. Amen. So they're able to actually, not only are they able on an individual job to like look at what's going on and really do stuff with it, they can look at it versus historical. So they can say, all right, well, this isn't going as well as similar jobs have. But also senior management can look at a dashboard and say, these two jobs are having a little bit of trouble. Let's allocate more people there to make sure that everything is okay. In a way that, is hard to do if you're on the ground. You may not see it. You may not see that the metrics are kind of laddering up to a bad story. So knowing that means, and the other thing is that, you're not going to love the idea of saying, hey, can I have more people? Right. But senior management might say, I don't care. You're going to get more, and we're going to make sure you get back on track. So, the goal of data is to help people make better decisions at the short term, medium term, and long term. And it takes a minute. It doesn't show up right away. You got to get better at putting it in and then analyzing it and so on. But it's not that hard. It just takes, like anything else, like going on a diet or going to the gym. It takes a little bit for the results to show up. But when they do, you look good at the beach.
That's awesome. And just a little bit of feedback for you. You're really knowledgeable about this. There's a lot of depth there. Even the terminology that you use lets me know that you're 100% tied into our industry. And not only can sympathize with what we go through, but also there's some empathy there and a lot of knowledge. So thank you. So let's get right into it, because I could just talk to you all day about technology, but we need to get to the book. You wrote a book called the Construction Technology Handbook. Can you give us a little bit of a history there and talk about what it is, and maybe even what it isn't?
Yeah, that's great. I like that second part. So as I was, spending again, between a hackathon and I launched a product that was aimed at the industry. Interestingly, we used voice for daily reports. So you would get a phone call and you just tell it what happened, which was fun. But what I came across was a lot of folks telling me that, adoption is slower than they wish it was. And one of the reasons why adoption of new technology is often slower than people wish it was is because the people doing the adopting don't feel like technology works for them. In today's world, people rarely doubt that technology is going to work. But what does happen is people say, yeah, but it's not for me. Maybe it's for, DPR and those guys out west, or maybe it's, or maybe it's for Facebook because they're a tech company. So I thought, all right, I started the process of writing something short. And I was like, I want to write a book. So there's a little bit of a bucket list thing in here too. So I got out there and talked to over 150 people. I mean, some of the empathy you talk about is, I've been lucky enough to talk to like Mike Zivanovic. I'm never going to get his name right. Is a good friend of mine. He's really a mentor. So he's a pipe fitter. That's why I use them as an example a lot. But also worked at the union and is now off doing some things with technology with GTP strategies. So anyway, basically the point of the book and where it came from is giving folks that are masters of other tools a comfort level with this set of tools. So, and I see that in industries like construction a lot. You got people that really spent years getting good at what they do, but because the kind of domain that's about is different from digital technology. A lot of times they feel like that's a different world, and it's not. It's just another set of tools. So that's really what the book is for. Is it starts from literally zero. I mean, to the point where you're going to know stuff in the first little bit as we start talking about what technology even is. And I'm a big fan of defining terms instead of just throwing them around, which people like to do. So we talk about what I mean by technology. We talk about what software even is. We talk about what an API is. One of the things about being someone who's got 10 years of experience, and really earned that experience is you don't always want to ask somebody, what do you mean by API? You know what I mean? What do you mean by this? So I define all that stuff. And then as the book progresses, we build on that foundation, and we do get to what artificial intelligence is, how it works, what it doesn't do, which for me is a big deal. I think there's been a lot of hype around some of these technologies, and they're very powerful in some cases, but we're comparing them to the wrong things. And that's a big point for me, is we got to stop thinking AI is like people that don't take breaks. It's just software that's smart. It's not people that are, you know what I mean? It's not the Matrix. It's precisely. There's no comparison. I mean, like a great example, everybody thought we were going to have self-driving cars in 2018. Well, we don't. And it's 2021. It's going to be a good year for that technology, but it's a lot harder than people thought, and it's a lot more limited than people thought.
Okay.
And it can't do your taxes. Like, it can only do that one thing. So that's sort of what the book was about. Is really a primer for people who are really good at one thing to feel comfortable asking questions, and also, like I mentioned earlier, being good consumers of software. So you're like, look, this would be better if it did this, or, you know what I mean? I'm comfortable enough with this that I can say something about it. You know what I mean? The first time you drink red wine, you don't know what to say about it. By the time you get pretty comfortable with it, you're like, I don't like this one. I like that one. I'd like people to be like that in software and digital technologies, to say, this needs to be easier to use. What if we did this? That was my point earlier, is that we're now at a place where software companies are really excited to hear from the field about how could we make this better for you, where I'm not sure that was true 5-10 years ago.
I think that's great, because they're probably getting past the how do I even get a viable product out stage. Now we're in the collaboration stage. We're in the integration stage. Like, let's come together. And here's this book, the Construction Technology Handbook, that can give us a common language so that we can connect, right? And I'm sure there are other resources out there too, but thank you for doing that. I remember can't remember if it was 2012, 14, or 15, but where I'm like, these things just don't talk well enough together. Even some of the more, I'm not saying they're basic applications, but the low hanging fruit like Revit and AutoCAD and Navisworks and stuff, they didn't, before that 2012, 11, 10, 9, they weren't talking together. Now they're talking together. Now we need to have all of the applications that are talking together talk to us in the field, right? And in construction. So we're in a different phase, it sounds like. And I think that we're primed and ready to go. One of the things, this is something, because in doing this podcast, I'm a lot more excited about tech than I was. It's funny. I don't know if you saw my profile, but I worked at DPR for 4 years and I love that company. Obviously what my red zone is, what I have to do led me to be a business owner, or else that'd be my favorite company. I love DPR and their technology. And so I was able to, they're a good group. It was like, we're doing this and we're doing this and we're doing this. And it was just like quick, rapid fire, not only the funding, but the experimentation and the support for the technology. And it made my life so much easier. That's where we started using vPlanner. We have Bluebeam for everything. We're using CMIC for the financials and for project management. Very quick, the quickest that we had at the time, daily report technologies like virtual reality. I miss those days. And so I'm glad that you talked to that group. They're a very forward-thinking group. So for me, the point that I've been having a hard time with is, and actually you already answered it, is instead of just saying, oh, there's a need in construction, let me go create an application and go market it and package it as one of 100,000 new ones out here. Let's maybe make some smarter, more intelligent decisions. And the technologies that are going to survive will be the ones that connect, that are, let's use your word, reliable, right? Where it makes our lives easier. So that's it right there for me, and I'd like to know two things. As we close out this podcast, are there any other messages that you have for our listeners, number one? And I'd like you to leave a challenge, because my challenge is anything that we do with construction, let's get rid of the addictive part. Let's say it needs to be reliable and it needs to accomplish its task and it needs to make our lives easier so that we can focus on safety, we can focus on people, we can focus on cleanliness, we can focus on the customer and what we're doing. So that's my challenge. What messages would you have to have for our listeners, or what challenges would you have?
Yeah, a couple things I'd say. One is every quarter I do something called the Construction Technology Quarterly. It's the looking at what's out there. So what technologies are there, what companies are there, and it's actually made for folks in the field. If you need something, you can go there and search easily. I'm not making any representations about what's good, bad, or indifferent. It's just all in one place, because it can feel like it's a big black cloud of tons of stuff. The second thing I'd say is technology is never going to be magic. It's never going to within a time frame anyone cares about. You're still going to have things not talking to each other like you wish they were, because companies compete. So Autodesk is not going to want to talk to Trimble, is not going to want to talk to Procore. They kind of do a little bit. There's a little bit of an integration, but it's not going to be seamless for a while. But the challenge I'd ask people is, go feel comfortable with this stuff. Feel like you know the hard stuff already. Okay. If you're I keep using pipe fitters, but also, if you're a mechanical, whatever it is, you've learned the hard stuff the hard way. This stuff isn't that hard. It's just a slightly new language, like learning how to order Chinese food. It's a little harder than that, but not too much. So the challenge is to get, to not feel like this is different. This is just another toolkit. My book is one way to help, but podcasts like this are another. There's a couple other things out there. Get out there and feel comfortable talking to the technology folks and saying it needs to be like this, not like what you're used to in an office. Because out here it's windy and we're busy and we don't have time for it. So you need to make it super easy and intuitive.
And to your point, it's not going away. I mean, there's some things, and I hope nobody sues me for this, but lead a little bit isn't as popular as it once was. But lean in construction is. And building information modeling is still as popular, meaning as useful. We just come to rely on it. And technology isn't going away either, right? It's here to stay.
And the other way around.
What's that?
It's the other way around. Between the labor shortages and just the fact the whole world. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, everyone's got a supercomputer in their pocket.
Yeah.
So it's not going away. It's going to become more and more a part of what you do. But ultimately, it's going to make your job safer, easier, and sometimes more fun. The fact that everybody on the job site watches Netflix during their lunch break tells you it can make it a little more fun sometimes.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the other thing is the keys for our industry to get better is we have to have more communication. We have to have more time to focus on the training of our people. But how cool would it be if we started assembling things like Legos, or like you go to the IKEA store, like everything's there. You almost don't even have to talk to somebody. Workers would likely, you just talked about being out in the cold and in the wind and things. What if we moved a lot of this in prefabrication into a nice shop where there's supportive environments, wonderful restrooms, wonderful lunchrooms, the technology there at our hands, stability, right? The technology was reliable, where you have a predictable environment, and then we assemble only what's needed out in the field, right? And technology is going to help us get there and only make prefabrication, and that's just an example, right?
Yep.
Things like prefabrication more possible. And the reason I like it is, where would I rather have a worker? Would I rather have a worker stick building something 80 feet up on the side of a building, or 500 feet up on the side of, not 500, 150 feet up on the side of the building? Or would I rather have them assembling it with technology, and just like DVC and some of these other companies, like printing, prefabricated wall panels and some of these other things, and simply assembling, craning, and having a smaller crew bolting them or fastening them in the field? And the answer to that is, I would rather the stability be with the workers. And man, technology is just going to help us with that if we do it the right way. So I love it. This has been fantastic. So we're coming up to the end here. Can you tell anybody listening, how can they reach you? What are some really useful resources? Let's make sure that we're leaving here with a good connection to you.
That's great. So I think the quarterly, the Construction Technology Quarterly is again, March 25th is the next one.
Okay.
So by all means, show up for that. It's free, of course. It's an hour. I'm going to go through some analysis of the industry. I already have available that searchable kind of database. You can always find me on LinkedIn. I actually have a lot of really good conversations going on that start with LinkedIn and then we do whatever. This is one of them, actually.
Okay, that's awesome.
So that's probably a really good. I'm actually right now also, I didn't mention this earlier when I talked about my background. I'm actually working on the Crosswalk API, which is taking CSI's master format, uniformat, and OmniClass and all of them now available via software. So that's kind of my day job, which I just wanted to mention there. Is really exciting to bring that sort of thing into, just make it easier for people to use. There's some other things. So this is a great podcast and I'm honored to be on here. Thank you for that. If you're getting a little more technical, the construction dorks are actually, I think, are doing something today. A group of folks in the Midwest that are construction technologists. So kind of fun to listen to what they're doing. Procore.org has some really good free training that is interesting. My courses are obviously some of them, but there's some other great stuff there too. And I think you're starting to find just more and more people in this massive industry with 8 million people in it, all of whom are busy and get up at 4 a.m. There's a lot of different ways that people can start to just get more and more comfortable with this, learn some valuable things, and hopefully put some of them to the test. The final thing I'd say is almost every software company will do a demo for you. So if you're curious about something and you say, "Hey, look, I work at DPR or HIT or wherever it is, and I'd like to see how your product works," most of them will say absolutely or watch this video first. But you can firsthand learn about this stuff pretty easily.
I love that. And please send me, if you don't mind, I want this show to go out tomorrow morning. So I would love to put those links, and especially to the all that free service that you provide in the show notes. And the other thing I'd love for you, if you have anybody that wants to reach out to some construction professionals in the field for some feedback, let me know, Hugh. I'd really love that. And if you have a relationship with Procore, I want to talk to them about their safety and quality interface and their drawing markup tools. So that's not a criticism. That's hey, if you know somebody, send them my way. We'll get to working on it. So I would love to be able to be an advocate there and really work on some of those things, because at the end of the day, my comment would be that there are so many representative examples of where we optimize the office, and when at the end of the day, the only person in construction, and this is a little bit dramatic, but this is I'm going to frame it this way: that the only real person in construction that makes this money is the worker. When they're screwing that piece of drywall up or installing that steel structure, that's actually what we get paid for, and everything else is necessary but non-value add scaffolding. You know what I mean? And so I really feel like we either got to do two things. We either got to switch and optimize the world or the environment of the worker and the field personnel, or at least do them at the same time. A couple of years ago, we were mostly, how do we optimize the office while they're still struggling out in the wind, right? And everything you said today supports that. And I just want to say thank you for coming on. This is actually 10 times better than I thought it would be talking to you, because there's just a lot of depth there and a lot of care. And I really think you're a remarkable human being. So appreciate you being on the podcast.
Thank you, Jason. This has been wonderful.
Yeah,
I'm really honored to be here.
Thank you very much. And for all of you listening, that wraps us up for today. But the vision for this, again, is that we have technology can be a huge part of bringing respect back to people and to the field and to construction, and having the right application, like Hugh's saying, with the right training at the right moments, is only going to help us, if done the right way, get us home to our families and live a remarkable life. And so that's the challenge. I hope everyone's enjoyed this. And if you want more, we'll have it in the show notes, and we might ask Hugh to come on again. I'm going to start talking him into that after this. So on we go.
Please join us next time in elevating the entire construction experience for workers, leaders, and companies coast to coast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to share with your construction colleagues and help us spread the word by rating, subscribing, and leaving a review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time on the Elevate Construction Podcast.